Tonight, we take a look back and a look ahead. First, though, Sandy, a year later, we have team coverage. That as we take a look at the fateful day a year ago to the day and how much progress has been made since then. And next, Obamacare under fire after the rocky rollout of the healthcare.gov. Sparks flew today at a congressional hearing on Capitol Hill. Fingers pointed, but at the end of the day, who should shoulder the blame? And later, anger continues to grow over the NSA spying program, but the nation's top intelligence chiefs say better to spy than to miss important warning signs. Tonight we'll ask if you agree. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us this Tuesday evening, October 29th. It has been exactly 1 year since Superstorm Sandy tore through the Northeast, leaving behind $65 billion in property damage. Well, today, the recovery efforts, they're ongoing, but not moving along as quickly as some have expected and hoped. Let's start off with Dominic Carter, who's got more.
Well, good evening, Richard. It was the second costliest hurricane since 1900. In all, hundreds of thousands of housing units were damaged or destroyed, and today, the rebuilding continues. Sweet sounds of progress.
Here we go, round two.
Clearing away the debris, working through the nightmares.
Are you wondering what's it going to feel like to be electrocuted?
Superstorm Sandy struck 1 year ago today.
1 year ago, we were in total chaos, complete devastation of this community, and we have begun 1 year later, clear signs, evidence of its rebirth and regrowth.
From the Jersey Shore to New York's Staten Island, the Rockaways and beyond, the devastation fierce, the rebuilding slow. The Department of Housing and Urban Development saying only 11% of Sandy 8 money has been given out. Hundreds of thousands of destroyed homes still uninhibited. Many residents still homeless. But today, many are focusing not on what was stolen by Sandy, but on what they've accomplished since.
I want us to all think about just how much better things look today than they looked a year ago, and celebrate that.
The boardwalk in Long Beach, New York rebuilt. Ellis Island reopened. Volunteers working still today to put roofs back over families' heads.
It's amazing how fast they're working. It's a beautiful thing.
And others spending this solemn anniversary pitching in to strengthen the dunes along the shore. The coastline and their spirits say they're getting stronger every day.
It's like a rebirth.
Now, those communities are declaring victory over the storm despite the mess that remains and the lives Sandy claimed. 117 people were killed in the storm. Those victims honored at services across the area today. Rich?
Thank you very much, Dominic. Now, let's go around our region a little bit, and we'll start off in Long Island, obviously hugely impacted by Sandy, and Long Beach on the South Shore hit particularly hard. Fox 1's Jody Goldberg, she was out reporting that fateful night, and for the past year, she has kept up to date with progress. Well, today, she takes us back to the boardwalk to see how folks are doing 1 year to the day. Jody?
That's right, Rich. I was in Long Beach 1 year ago today when Superstorm Sandy struck. The damage to the area was intense. The storm pushed the water over the boardwalk and into the city. The area's signature boardwalk was destroyed, but now it's back in business as area residents continue to rebuild. This was Long Beach at its absolute worst, the night of Monday, October 29th, 2012, as Superstorm Sandy roared ashore. And this is what it looks like 1 year later on a beautiful autumn day with plenty of folks out enjoying their brand new boardwalk, complete with reinforced tropical hardwood, newly installed metal fencing, and a storm wall.
Right where we are right now is where the ocean and the bay met.
Long Beach City Manager Jack Schneerman was in waist-deep water that night. But once that water subsided, that's when the real work began.
We're able to avoid the city spiraling out of control from a public safety perspective, and we're able to call in help from every agency around the country in order to make sure that Long Beach residents were safe and secure.
These are some of the images that are now permanently embedded in people's minds, what Long Beach looked like in the weeks and months following Superstorm Sandy. You may remember we caught up with Sam Kinsley at her Pennsylvania Avenue home, which was literally wrapped in red tape as a symbol of her fight with the federal government to get funding. As it turned out, her house had to be demolished, and she's now in the process of rebuilding her new home. Only this time, the first floor doesn't start until almost 10 feet off the ground. You're not taking any chances.
I don't think another storm's coming. I hope another storm's not coming, but if it does, I think that at least the house will be safe.
We've learned that doing nothing is not an option, that failing to protect the city is no longer an option, and that tolerating flooding from even, just those sort of average, normal monthly rainstorms just doesn't make sense anymore and isn't what our residents deserve and doesn't make us feel safe.
And even though the city's beloved 2-mile-long boardwalk is now completely rebuilt, there are parts of the city still in need of repair. Overall, officials and residents alike are pleased with how far things have come, but everyone down here is well aware of the possibility of another superstorm striking again. They all agree it's not a question of if, but a matter of when. Rich?
Well, thank you very much, Jody. And to that point, a little bit later, we're going to be talking about the possibilities, if not probabilities, of another storm and the readiness of our region for it. But we go from Long Island now to New Jersey, and on this one-year anniversary, we go to where the storm left an unimaginable path of destruction. Many communities still, as we speak, recovering from that historic storm, including both Belmar and Lake Como. Both towns located along the ocean, and they were forced to deal with major flooding following Sandy. Fox 1's Natalie Patterson, she's in Lake Como this evening for a closer look at the progress there. Natalie?
Good evening, Rich. I'm right where I was almost exactly 1 year ago when Hurricane Sandy came roaring up the coast, except instead of standing next to the water here in Lake Como, the only way to get into this community was by boat. The water was about midway up this tree when folks woke up the day after Hurricane Sandy. That water came up so quickly. The fact that that lake is now where it's supposed to be is progress. Here's a look at the rest of the town. Following one of the most powerful storms the Jersey Shore has ever seen, it was eerily calm in Lake Como.
To see the lake pushed up in like 2 or 3 blocks where you often have to park to go to the beach was really just an indelible impression that there were rowboats in the street.
Everything was quiet and still. The only sound was the paddle on our boat as we passed by homes and large pieces of debris. In Belmar, the town just north of Lake Como, rescue crews took their own boats into neighborhoods to evacuate residents. A few blocks east, the boardwalk was gone.
It was total devastation. The bathroom that's across the street was blown into our house, crushed into it. We had sand all over, debris.
Today, the water in Lake Como is back to its normal level. Some of the houses surrounding it are still in the midst of being repaired, but most residents are back home.
The serenity, which is what so many people come here for, that was restored.
Belmar enjoyed a strong summer with its brand new boardwalk in place. With few exceptions, most businesses along the water are back open. Of course, there's still a fair amount of construction going on in town, but even today, people flock to the shore to enjoy the weather.
There were more bikers and people walking on the boardwalk. It was like a spring or early summer here. It's good just to see the way Belmar has recovered.
I'm only a couple blocks away from the ocean, so beach replenishment and dunes are going to be vital moving forward. But both towns, Belmar and Lake Como, are paying even more attention now to the lakes like this one. They're building up the banks of the lakes, and both towns have installed new pumps to get that water level lower faster when a storm is approaching. In Lake Como, Natalie Patterson, FiOS 1 News.
Thanks a lot, Natalie. Now, much of our area's infrastructure, as you remember, was severely damaged by Sandy, especially when you remember Lower Manhattan. You had tunnels, subways, even the World Trade Center site here, they were flooded. Well, today, State highlighted the recovery work and what is being done to try and mitigate the effects of future storms. And Samantha Liebman, she follows us from the World Trade Center with more on that. Samantha?
Lower Manhattan was walloped by Sandy. Basically, the Hudson River met the East River, but in the years since, a lot of progress has been made rebuilding as well as protecting vital sites down here. Governor Andrew Cuomo says there were many lessons learned from Hurricane Sandy.
The theme we've been using on the state side is Build Back Better. We're going to be the better for the experience, but also let's learn from the experience. I do not believe that this is the last time we're going to go through this.
Already 3,000 projects are underway to build back better, and today the governor toured many in Lower Manhattan, which was hard hit. Sandy inundated the World Trade Center construction site with 125 million gallons of water, flooding the PATH station as well. Thanks to pumps, construction resumed within 6 days, but resiliency work continues.
Our team is also raising the level of waterproofing, raising key electrical and mechanical equipment, identifying and sealing key points where water can enter.
Meanwhile, the MTA is working on flood mitigation at nearly 600 entry points in Lower Manhattan alone. 14 million gallons of salt water flooded the New South Ferry station, which is still closed. The MTA is looking at inflatable plugs and covers like this one.
It took us a while to ascertain the exact locations of the 540 different locations. And in some of the contracts we've let, they're going out and doing measurements and doing what needs to be done to determine what's the best way to protect those enclosures.
The MTA is spending $4.5 billion on design projects alone, money well spent, according to Housing Secretary John Donovan, who is overseeing the federal funding.
We can't afford not to build smarter. For every dollar that we invest in the kind of projects that you're seeing today, we save $4 the next time a storm hits.
So again, a lot of progress has been made, but a lot of work still needs to be done to protect this area, which is so vital to the whole region's economy. That's the latest here from the World Trade Center site. Back to you, Rich.
Thank you, Sam. Now, later on this hour, we're going to hear from an expert who's going to explain how shoring up not just with hard structures, but even natural barriers may be the most effective way to plan for future storms. And people, they are coming. And for even more on our region's resurgence after Sandy, I encourage you, if you're a FIOS customer, to tune in tonight at 7 p.m. for a special presentation, Sandy, 1 year later. Again, that's tonight right after RFL on FIOS 1 News. Now, in the meantime, we're bringing you folks at home into our conversation. And tell us what you have to say. Just go to Facebook and Twitter and share your Sandy stories. A year ago, where were you? And if you, like so many, cope with so many challenges, how is the state of your recovery and rebuilding here? We want to hear from you. Again, Facebook.com/Richard French Live. All right. You know, Dominic, it was interesting. Government, and we're going to be talking about this throughout the hour. You think about both Obamacare and also NSA, and there's certainly what we saw with the debt limit fight and, shutting the government down, et cetera. Government's always questioned, but people always want government after a national disaster. And I think some people forget how long it took for the funding just to be approved. And then I think people are going through this education process, just because they say, okay, we're going to appropriate the funding, the longer you take for it to get out there, the longer it takes to get into people's hands. And that's some of the frustration this region's still dealing with.
That's definitely the case. And I remember how angry you were going back, representing the region in terms of fighting to get the money out there. It took Washington and the state a while. And still, even today, we're looking at people still have not received the funds that they need to rebuild and to get on with their lives. And so government works most of the time, but sometimes it does not.
And, I heard Peter King today, the Long Island Congressman, Republican, who today even said that he was PO'd. And he specifically said at Republicans, because Tom Coburn was an example, the Republican from Oklahoma, he's going to be coming to New York for a fundraiser. And he said he's the guy who held up funding. He didn't hold it up for when there was disasters in his state, didn't hold it up after Katrina, didn't hold it up after all these areas, but they held it up for more than 3 months here. And as a result, that was 3 months that people had to wait for recovery to even get started, to get the money to get in the process. And it does take a while. The amount of money that still hasn't been spent, that was appropriated, it's so frustrating. And you feel for those folks on the coasts in our region that are still just trying to get their lives together. I know you've been pushed for patience here, but it's still going to be a while for too many of you out there. So we will come back to the issue of protecting our region going forward from Mother Nature later on in the program. But when we come back, we switch gears and we turn to politics. And there's two major challenges that are sitting on the president's desk right now. That is the NSA sweeping spying program and the bungled Obamacare rollout. The question is, how much will he own these two issues? We're going to bring in our panel, sound off on that and more. Stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back.